Our first speaker of the evening is Katie McGrady, who's an award-winning author and host of the Katie McGrady Show on the Catholic Channel on Sirius XM. Katie also hosts 3 podcasts: Ave Explores from Ave Maria Press, Like a Mother with Our Sunday Visitor, and Family Mass Prep on Hallow. She also writes for many publications. She represented the entire Church of the United States at the pre-synod gathering of youth and young adults for the 2018 Synod on Youth in the Vatican, and serves as a member of the Working Group on Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. She lives in Lake Charles, Louisiana with her husband and daughters, and in tonight's talk she will complement the extraordinary talk we had by Patrick Kelly earlier tonight. As Patrick spoke about fatherhood in the Eucharist, Katie tonight will speak from her experience as a daughter and a mother on the theme, Fostering Eucharistic Love Within the Family. Please join me in welcoming Katie McGrady.
Oh my. It is so good to be here on such holy ground and to see your lovely faces. I'm going to pull a Jerry Seinfeld and take this off, if that's okay. Thank you. It's so nice to get out and to be in beautiful upstate New York, where the leaves change. That doesn't happen in Louisiana. I swiped some earlier for my daughters. That'll be their souvenir from this particular trip. It's interesting, my kids are very easily pleased. If I bring back leaves, they'll be quite happy. And kids have such a fascinating way of processing the world and how they think of certain things. And I think I've learned more. I have a photo of my girls, by the way, if we can put that picture up of my daughters. Rose is 6 and Claire is 3. And I travel to speak because I have to pay for Catholic school, as you can see by the plaid. And it's so interesting, the school that they go to, it's a classical Catholic school, so they're learning various life skills along with math and writing and reading and all the good stuff. And so a couple of years ago, my daughter Rose, who is 6, when she was in pre-K 4, so 4 years old, we had a career day at school. All the moms and dads got to come for career day. So the parents are lined up in the back, and all the kids got a turn to go up to the front and talk into a microphone, which is a big deal for little kids, and introduce themselves. And they'd go, hi, my name is Christian, and this is my daddy Doug, and he's an engineer. And so everybody would clap for Doug the engineer, because we know what engineers do for a living. And then up came little Lincoln Shoemaker. Lincoln's about 2 feet tall at this age. And he goes, hi, my name is Lincoln, and this is my daddy Jared, and he's a lawyer. And everybody knows what a lawyer does, so they clap for Jared the lawyer. And then up comes little Rose McGrady with her curly hair and her gap tooth. And she goes, hi, my name is Rose, and this is my mommy, Katie, and she talks to the wall while she's alone. Everybody turns and looks at Katie, who talks to the wall, and I went, I work in radio, and someone's listening, and I think it's just my mom. But hey, Sirius XM has a lot of subscribers. Sometimes they let me out of the house and away from the wall, and I get to come talk to people. I never knew that's what she thought I did for a living, though. Like, I thought she knew I worked in radio. It's funny how kids process things, and they have expectations of things. I was just sharing with Brother Simeon, who's a family friend. We got to see him this summer in Scranton, where my husband is from. I was an anathema Louisiana woman. I married a Yankee, and we have to make our pilgrimage up to the north every summer. And we were making our great pilgrimage up to the lands of the northern folk. And we found out that Brother Simeon was going to be home, and so we got to go to his home visit. We got to go to this barbecue his family was hosting. And we were telling our girls all about who we were going to go see and building it up for them. And they had a hard time understanding what a friar was. So we explained it like this. It's a boy nun. And she got that. She understood that. So we pull up to Brother Simeon's family's party. And my husband, Tommy, who was Brother Simeon's youth minister, who had not seen him in years, and I'd kind of surprised him with this trip to go see Brother Simeon, he's so excited, and he hops out of the minivan, and he takes off to go give Brother Simeon a big, big hug. And my daughter Rose had drawn pictures, and she'd been so excited to meet the boy nun that we've been talking about all weekend long. And she shrunk. into herself. She was terrified. And I was like, they have big beards. It can be a little terrifying at first glance. But she didn't want anything to do with him. She'd drawn him a picture, didn't want to give it to him, didn't want to interact with anybody else. She was terrified, and we couldn't figure it out. She had all these expectations, and they were just completely dashed for some reason. No offense, brother, but she did not anticipate, I guess. And we got back in the van an hour and a half later, and I was kind of a little annoyed as a mom. You did not behave well, and you were not friendly, and you were not kind. And I was a little embarrassed, and I said, Rose, what was going on? And she said, well, Mom, we got there, and Dad was just really excited. And he was in his wizard costume, and he didn't have shoes on, and I thought he wasn't American. And she had all these expectations, and she met the wizard without shoes, and they were completely dashed. Kids, they put you in your place real quick. But we try as parents, we try as moms and dads to keep our kids Catholic, or at the very least, give them a fighting chance. I'm a millennial, so not many of us are still Catholic. My sister and I both are, so my parents have a 2-for-2 record. That's pretty good. And she's a canon lawyer, so she's the smart one in the family. But as we've been raising our girls, not just sending them to Catholic school, but taking them to Mass on Sunday and popping into the Adoration Chapel for just a few minutes before we get death glares from the people in there, confused why our children are talking so much. As we've been trying to help our children understand this faith, sorry about that, guys. That's why you weren't laughing. As we've been trying to help our children understand the faith and teach them what it truly means to be Catholic, we've realized that sitting down and trying to give them complicated theological explanations, listening to the proper podcasts on the way to school, trying to help them understand the faith is often done in the simple, almost passing moments. We pull out of our neighborhood, and we drive about 2 miles to our Catholic school every morning. And we have to pass by a Catholic church on the way, Our Lady Queen of Heaven. I grew up going to Our Lady Queen of Heaven. It's where my husband and I were married. I was the youth minister there for a few years. It's where my kids were baptized. It's home. We love this church. And when we pass by the church, when I was a kid growing up, my dad would make the sign of the cross when we'd pass in front of the church, and I learned to make the sign of the cross. And I guess Rose was 3 or so, and we drove past the church one day, and I did the sign of the cross, and she went, Mom, what are you doing? And I said, well, Jesus is inside. There's also a giant crucifix on the outside, so I thought you'd make the connection at some point, but it's okay. And she went, hi, Jesus. And we kept going. So it became a thing. We'd drive past 3939 Lake Street, and we'd pass in front of Our Lady Queen of Heaven Catholic Church, and we'd wave to Jesus. And at first, it kind of felt silly. Who waves to Jesus? But then it became this, Rose would communicate with Jesus out the window. Jesus, we're going to school. Giving him a morning update. Jesus, Mom's being mean to me. Fill him in on how I'm a bad parent. Jesus, I'm scared. And I realized this familiarity was growing with Jesus, kind of unbeknownst to me. It wasn't like I was telling her, say hi to Jesus, and then documenting it for Instagram, because it's not real if it's not on social media, right? It was just this understanding that had slowly developed in her little head that he was in there, and we can say hi. Because he's not a thing, and he's not a concept. And yes, it's a golden box, and that's a little confusing to a kid at first. And explaining monstrances to little kids often goes, a monstrance? No, not a monstrance, a monstrance. But Jesus scares away the monsters, so it needs to be a monstrance. I've written the Vatican a handful of times to request a name change. It hasn't worked just yet. But to say, hi, Jesus, just a quick little hello, has developed a faith that I did not realize was as deep as it was until just a few weeks ago, in fact. See, I have a 6-year-old Rose, so she's very familiar with hi, Jesus, and I've got a 3-year-old Claire. And some kids come out and they are just these little angelic humans that listen to you and respond to requests and do as they're told. And then you have children like Claire who are, I'm convinced 2020 children are going to either rule the world or destroy it, and I'm not sure which yet. She is the Tasmanian devil of children. She's wild and she's crazy, and we love her, but she does not know the definition of be still and quiet. And she moves 90 miles an hour constantly. Little Claire is going to sanctify me quicker than any other child I've ever had. And we're sitting in the van and we're driving to school, and this was a particularly challenging Friday morning because it was the beginning of September, and on that particular Friday morning, my little sister Laura had gotten on a plane to fly to New York to enter the Sisters of Life, to enter postulancy. And we'd said our goodbyes the evening before, and she was off to this new life far away, no cell phone. We could call from time to time. We can write plenty of letters. And my girls were processing this. They were processing Wawa, that's what we call my little sister, not after the gas station because her name is Laura, that Wawa was leaving and Wawa was now gone and we would not see Wawa for quite some time. And we're driving to school and I was feeling a little down. I'm going to miss my little sister. It's just the two of us. And my girls are in the backseat of the car, and we pass by Our Lady Queen of Heaven Catholic Church, and right as we're coming up on the church, I hear our typical, "Hi, Jesus," from Rose. She's a little sadder as she said it today, though. And then little Claire, buckled into her car seat, screams at the top of her lungs, "Don't be sad, Jesus!" And I'm driving, and I went, "Why would Jesus be sad, Claire Bear?" And she went, "'Cause Wawa's gone." I said, "Well, but Wawa's going to see Jesus." Rose, "But Jesus is right there. Can we go see Wawa?" And I said, No. He's also in the Bronx, and he's outside of time and space, but we'll do that lesson later. And this is all happening right as we're passing by the church. "Don't be sad, Jesus, but Jesus is right there." And then I hear Claire say, "Be happy, Jesus, Wawa coming to see you." And my face kind of lights up, and then there's this really quiet voice that pipes up from Rose. And she goes, "Tell her we say hi, Jesus." Oh, and it gutted me in that moment. As I realized she'd made this connection, that Jesus was right there at 3939 Lake Street, that he's right over there somewhere. I have not walked down to the other chapel where Jesus is being kept right now, but he's over there somewhere, and he's in our hearts, and he's present when we read sacred scripture, and he's in the chapel in the convent where my sister now lives, and that my daughter in that moment, all 6 years old of her, understood that Jesus could tell her hello for us. And that we could say hi to her through him. Not that he's like a carrier pigeon, but that there's this connection. That there's this Eucharistic unity. I didn't sit my children down and read book 1 of the Summa to explain this to them. I didn't read book 1 of the Summa. Please don't tell my theology professors. That's what Wikipedia is for. I didn't show them glitzy, glamorous YouTube videos explaining catechetical references. You know what I did? We took them to church and stood in the back half the time and avoided angry glares from people when we avoided the cry room. We popped into the adoration chapel on the way home from school frequently enough to where they realized, oh, this is a special place where we're meant to be quiet. We waved, "Hi, Jesus." And I'm no expert. They're 6 and 3. They could become heathens tomorrow, and I would have no way of really stopping it. They could disaffiliate in 20 years, and I have to eat my hat for the past 10 years of my career. Or maybe they'll continue to say, "Hi, Jesus." Tell Wawa we say hi as she discerns her vocation and continues to enter into this life. And what's really profound is that it's obvious in my children, and it's developed within me, that what we really need to have revival in this country, what we really need to grow Catholic families in the way we hopefully want them to grow, is that we develop a familiarity with the Lord. That the Eucharist becomes familiar to us. And that word familiar, it means intimate, it means relationship, it means close. And it sounds an awful lot like the word family. A family is familiar. We know everything about each other. You can pick up a conversation halfway through. It's why I'm not all that worried about growing apart from my one sister while she's discerning her vocation, because I'm pretty sure I could pick up the phone and we could pick back up where we left off the last time we chatted, where I asked her, hey, are you going to be at that Eucharistic Congress thing up in upstate New York? To which she very hesitantly said on the phone, no. And I was like, darn it, like close but not quite there. That's okay. I'll knock on the door some other time. Just get ready, sisters. We've got the address. But then she said, but I was just there. And I said, what? And she said, yeah. I was just there. The postulants went to go close up the camp, and we got to go to the shrine of the Martyrs. Which means that just a couple of weeks ago, my little sister was in this room praying. The very same room I get to stand in and talk to all of you about growing in a familiarity with Jesus. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, I can't wait to say, hey Jesus, tell her I said hi. In the same place where she was praying for this event with 8 other women in formation. The Eucharist is sometimes this thing that we make quite complicated, that we make quite heady, and it is. And praise God for the intelligent people that can talk about it in that way, that can talk about Jesus in that way. But the Eucharist is also meant to be this very almost gritty, personal, familiar understanding of the Lord who comes close to us, that we can wave hi to on the way to school. This Jesus that wants to literally be consumed within us and closer to us than anything else imaginable. And growing a Eucharistic love within our family is about bringing, especially our children, our young children who have a religious sensibility far more deep than I think we sometimes realize, bringing them close to that Eucharistic Lord, showing them that they have every right to be in His presence just like anyone else, dirty glances when you're not in the cry room or not. That Jesus Christ present to us in the Eucharist is how we become saints. Not just consuming, but adoring, receiving, being in His presence, and knowing this is precisely where I'm meant to be. That I can cry out to Him that I miss my Aunt Wawa, that I miss my sister, that Mom was mean to me this morning, that I need help on the Spanish test, that I'm worried about my marriage, that I'm stressed about my finances, that the Eucharist wants to transform every part of our life, but that we must show every part of our life to Jesus in the Eucharist for that to happen. Because the one thing I'm always worried about with my kids, the one thing that I worry about in my own spiritual life, I worry that, am I hiding something from Jesus? Not because I'm ashamed, or not because I think He doesn't want to hear about it, but that because I think it's not important enough to bring up to Him. That Jesus has way too long a to-do list to worry about my very simple problems. We play suffering Olympics. Oh, well, they're struggling with a lot more than I am. Jesus doesn't want to hear about that. Oh, Jesus is probably healing a person who's sick. I can't say hello to him right now. Jesus doesn't see all that I'm carrying, and He doesn't care about all that I'm dealing with. I'm too burdened, and I just don't have time to go sit in His presence. Fostering a Eucharistic love within the family is creating this familiarity by ultimately showing our children, because we ourselves recognize that we can go to Jesus with anything. That Jesus does not run, He does not shy, He does not hide, He does not ignore. In fact, longs for and delights in those moments when we go to Him crushed and broken and scared and joyful and rejoicing and excited and pleased. That we can say, hi, Jesus, with great gusto. We can say, hi, Jesus, with great sadness. We can say we're sad. We can say we are happy, Jesus, and He is ready to take it all. And the familiarity that grows in the person who knows the Eucharist is always present, and that Jesus longs for us to be close to Him there. That's a heart, that's a witness, that's a person in this world that people want to know about, that people are drawn to. That people see and they literally stop and go, I want what they have. I want to understand what's going on inside of them. That's why Eucharistic processions can shut down Times Square and can circle a mountain and people stop and stand in awe. It's why the woman who's had the holy hour at 10 a.m. on Thursday at our parish my entire life is probably the holiest person I know. Sweet Miss Constance, who goes and sits in front of Jesus, and as a kid, I knew she had that holy hour, and as an adult woman, I've known she's got that holy hour, and I can see this time in front of the Son has literally changed your life, has literally transformed who you are. And I want some of that for myself. I want some of that for my children. Yet we run. We run because we think he can't handle it, or we run because we are ashamed, or we are convinced our kids can't handle it, or we don't want to shove it down their throats, or we don't want to force it upon them, that familiarity is something they need to gain for themselves. And I am sick and tired of Catholic parents who think that someone else is going to do it for them. And I am tired of a church that thinks that families sometimes don't have a place. That moms and dads are not just the first educators of our children, but are the first witnesses to the power of the Eucharist. There's nothing more powerful than a father who's kneeling after he receives communion and praying with his children. There's nothing more precious than watching a mother bounce her child in the back of a church to sleep in the middle of the consecration. That this is the witness that the world needs, a family that shows up to church and recognizes that's where they belong. That brings children close to the Eucharist because they know that's Jesus. Far too frequently, we allow ourselves to be consumed with all these other things, not just in life, but in the world, in our relationships, in our families, with our jobs, where we become people so consumed with this external doing that we think that that's enough for our family's faith. Oh, well, we go to CCD. We listen to family mass prep on Hallow. We tithe our mandatory amount to receive the supplement for our Catholic school tuition. We show up for the Bible study. We do all those things that are expected, and yet I couldn't tell you the last time my family prayed spontaneously together. The last time we showed up to church, not just on time, and I know it's a fight to get there on time sometimes, but early, and maybe stayed a few minutes late to actually talk to Jesus, who just made himself present to us. We become so consumed with all this external that we forget the thing that actually makes us who we're meant to be is this familiar relationship with Jesus, who thirsts for us, who hungers for us, who longs to be close to us. Years ago, I had a wonderful spiritual director. Dominicans are real tough, so don't go to them for spiritual direction unless you're ready to be put through the ringer. And I went into this spiritual direction, and I was just tapped out. I'd been traveling a whole heck of a lot, kind of on the road constantly. My husband had solo massed with our girls far more than he should have had to, in a very difficult phase with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I was feeling this stretch where I'd done all this ministry and I'd done all these things for Jesus and felt so far from him. And it was in the middle of learning about some things that were going on with my family and kind of struggling with processing, like, how are these transitions and these changes going to happen? And I went to spiritual direction that day and I complained, which is my favorite kind of spiritual direction, the complaining kind. And a good spiritual director can take the complaining and find where the Spirit is and where the Spirit's moving. And he listened very patiently and very quietly, and then he said, I'm going to give you an assignment. For the next year, you're going to go home, and every day for a year, you're going to read Luke chapter 10, 38 to 42. Now, I had not brought my Bible to spiritual direction that day. So I was like, ooh, I hope it's a good one. And I got home, and I flipped open to Luke chapter 10, 38 to 42, and it was the story of Martha and Mary. And I went, darn it, because I don't like that one. I don't like that one for a variety of reasons. Primarily because years ago, and I'm sorry if this is your favorite spiritual book, but years ago my mom mailed me a copy, very Southern mom, passive-aggressive, mailed me a copy of a book called Having a Merry Heart in a Martha World. I didn't like that book, so I didn't like the story. Because Martha, I mean, come on, y'all, she always gets a bad rap. Ever Everybody loves Mary. Mary's the prayer. Mary loves Jesus. But Martha is the main character of the story. And I feel like we need to redeem Martha a little bit. And maybe Martha can actually be a great witness for families in this Eucharistic familiarity and love we are trying to foster. Because Martha's really all of us. We're all really Martha. It says in the story, as they continued their journey, he entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha, main character, first one mentioned, welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary, lazy, who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. And then it says Martha, burdened. Oh, I love that word. Burdened with much serving. Luke is a physician, and he's writing to a Gentile audience, and he's very, very specific with his words. And so when he tells us that she is burdened, he wants us to feel it. And every person in this room immediately thought of the burden that they are carrying right now, of the burden they left behind to come to a mountain in Auriesville for the day, of the burden they're struggling with their children who have disaffiliated from the faith, of the burden they have in their marriage, in their job, with their finances, in the burden that maybe they're terrified to show Jesus. But I think sometimes the burden is not all that dramatic. It could be. Take that to the Lord. But I think sometimes the burden is just this simple plague of our minds that constantly whir, of the weight of just knowing so many things and carrying so many responsibilities and tasks that we know we can't just put them to the side, they have to get done. But that mental load burdens us to where we don't have time for Jesus. I don't have time to say hi, Jesus, when I drive past the church. I don't have time to bring my kids to adoration. That's a luxury that I do not have time for. I'm burdened with all of this. A couple of just like about a year ago or so, I was really feeling this burden in my family because I had never realized how much paperwork is involved with little kids in school. They send a worksheet home every day. Homework, not just the homework though, it's the calendars of dress-up days and responsibilities that you have for the bake sale. And it's like, I want the version of Catholic parenthood where I write the check and I send the kid to school and you send the kid home. And that's it. And then Catholic Schools Week arrives, and they send home this packet of things that we have to do. And it was all these dress-up days. And it's all swirling in my head, because I'm the mom, and I'm going to keep those things mentally in check. I know it all, the birth dates, the social security numbers, the doctor's names and phone numbers, and all the dress-up days for good old Catholic Schools Week. And so I got smart. I went, it's 2022. We have phones. And I put it all in a shared calendar with my husband, so that all the dress-up days would pop up on our phone first thing in the morning, and we'd know this is what they have to wear to go to school today. And it was Tuesday. And Tuesday was Red Shirt Day. I bought the shirts. I had them ready. At 6:15 a.m., there was going to be a notification on the phone, and my husband would put them in the red shirts because God loves this good man that I've married. He wakes up first with the kids, and I roll in at 6:25, nice and refreshed, not a morning person, ready to take over mom duties. And so I walk into the kitchen at 6:25 knowing the notification went off for Red Shirt when he was supposed to get them dressed. And I walk into the kitchen, and my lovely, beautiful children are sitting at the breakfast nook in their uniforms, chowing down on Lucky Charms. And I look over, and my husband is standing at the sink in khakis and a red shirt, looking like Jake from State Farm. And I looked at him, and I looked at my children, and I said, babe, did you? And he went, yeah, I understand the mistake that I've made. And he walked out of the room. And I just want to paint a picture. At 6:15 in the morning, after he'd been awake for 2 hours, the phone notified him, red shirt. And he went, I got to go put on a red shirt. And he changed clothes and then dressed our children. I lost it. I said things I'm not proud of. It's a miracle our marriage survived that 10 minutes. See, sometimes the burden is a red shirt on the wrong person at 6:25 on a Tuesday. We are weighed down. And that's Martha in this moment. It's not that Martha's annoyed at Mary. It's that she's annoyed at all of it. She is burdened with all of it. And we are so burdened and we are so weighed down and things are so heavy that we think the Eucharist is very low priority in my family. And Jesus will get to him. There's plenty of time. He wouldn't want us there anyway. We're too much of a mess. And here's Martha, burdened with much serving. You can feel it, and she goes to him. This is why she's the coolest woman in all of Scripture. She's burdened, and she came to him and she said, and you know she was sassy when she said it, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? I have prayed those words many a time since my little sister left. Lord, do you not care that you left me by myself? And yet here's Martha, and with such boldness, gosh, this woman has a great amount of faith, doesn't she? That she walks up to Jesus and she tells him exactly what she's thinking. So many of us hold back and think we need Shakespearean phrases to talk to the Lord. He's from the Middle East, not England. He wants the sassy. He wants the Lord, do you not care? He wants the, this kid is driving me crazy. He wants the, I don't know how we're paying the mortgage next month. He wants the, I feel so alone and so unseen. Do you see me? He wants the burden. Because it is in sharing the burden that we become familiar. It's in the screaming, Jesus, don't be sad. And Jesus, tell her we said hi. Those moments of intimacy. And oh, Martha's got such great faith that she goes to him. Do you not care? And I can only imagine the tenderness that Jesus has in that moment. Because he says her name twice. And anytime Jesus says somebody's name, we ought to pay attention. Sometimes he changes the names. Sometimes he uses the names to cast out a demon. And sometimes he says a name with such tenderness and love, you can feel it in your heart. Martha, Martha. Martha. And then he names it. You are anxious and worried about many things. He sees all of her in that moment. He knows her tired, lonely self, and he loves her. When we come to the Eucharist, he wants our tired and lonely selves. When we bring our families to the Eucharist, he wants us, even if we're rolling in 5 minutes late or showing up 10 minutes early. He wants us with our questions. He wants us with our fears. He wants us with our joys. He wants us when we say, Lord, do you not care? He wants us when we're avoiding him. He wants us when we're running to him. Or when we're driving past and you just wave hi. Martha, Martha, you're anxious and worried about many things. And then he extends an invitation and he points to her sister and he says, Mary has chosen the better part and it will not be taken from her. Which means that Martha, who feels alone and tells Jesus she feels alone, is given the opportunity to feel less alone by being with him. And it is this beautiful progression of growing in familiarity. Perhaps the way we grow Eucharistic love in our family is by going to him, even if the kids are squirmy, even when they have lots of questions, even when they might feel distant and alone from the Lord, and saying, Lord, we are here and we want to know that you care, and hear him call us by our name. Grow in that intimacy and love in a way that transforms the world. Martha went to Jesus with this boldness, and we are called to the same boldness, and then Martha sits with him. Because we know the follow-up story that when Jesus comes to raise Lazarus from the dead, who is it that greets him but Martha? With such confident faith, Lord, had you been here, this would not have happened. But I know you still will do something great. How did Martha go from burdened and anxious and worried and alone to you have great faith to raise the dead, if not but just spending time at his feet? How do we keep our children Catholic? The million-dollar question in the church today, it's not from anything you're going to say. It's from giving them time in front of him. It's not from anything that we're necessarily going to do other than putting him with Jesus, who transforms hearts. Because I got to tell you, there's something really beautiful about not just driving past a church and saying, "Hi, Jesus, bye, Jesus," but when we come home from school, and on no less than 5 or 6 occasions since Wawa entered the convent, that Rose has said, "Mom, can we go say hi to Jesus so we can feel close to Wawa?" Because she knows that familiarity is there with him. The link, the connection, the universal connection is there with Jesus, present in the Eucharist. It's not a magic trick. It's not silly. It is profound. And it is an awareness. It is a growing in an awareness of his goodness. This is perhaps the last thing, and the thing that I've been wrestling with a lot lately in prayer. I think so many of us in this world today, in this church today, right now in this room, I would imagine, we approach Jesus like this: "Lord, what do you want from me? What do you want from me?" And sometimes we say it sassy, like good old Martha. "What do you want from me? I've done all these things. I came to Auriesville. I showed up with thousands of people to hang out for the day in the frigid cold." It was really cold. I was not expecting that. "Lord, I volunteer at the church. I pay my tithe. I show up when you need me. Lord, what do you want from me?" That's what we say to God. "What do you want from me?" And God so gently and lovingly, and Jesus reveals to us consistently again and again, "Oh, I don't want anything from you. No, I want something for you." And what he wants for us is our good. What he wants for us is to know his love. So much so that he gives himself to us in the most vulnerable and tiny way, consumable, adorable, precious, that will follow it through the woods, that will walk through Times Square, that will pop into the church for a quick hello, that will wave on the way to school in the morning. He does not want something from you other than your heart, but wants something for you, which is your good. As I've been here this weekend, and it's been a real privilege and a joy to be on this holy ground, watching these incredible reunions happen, people that know each other, these moments of great celebration and joy. I was really moved last night as we were in this space together, and I thought, this is the room where my little sister got to pray a couple weeks ago. That's pretty cool. Thanks for that, Jesus. We get to kind of pray together. But also a place where we have the opportunity to really enter into a form of worship, a chance to be in God's presence in a way that will never happen ever again. Every time we step into a church, that group of people will maybe never ever be together in that way again. That little moment, that snapshot, that connection point with heaven. That we have an opportunity in these moments right now to worship in a new way, to blow the roof off the place and just let God show us his goodness. That we have the chance to sit at the feet of Jesus and be, and unburden ourselves, or at the very least let him carry the burdens with us, and come to see that he has something good for us. And that witness, that really does change it. It changes our families, it changes our workplaces, it changes our neighborhoods. My parents kept 2 millennial children Catholic, and really Catholic. And it wasn't because they taught us complicated theology or they forced us to go to youth group retreats. It's because my parents prayed. They're daily mass goers. They go every morning at 6:30 a.m. to that same church that I drive past every morning with my kids. And I've known that about them my whole life. I go with them when I'm able to drag my lazy butt out of bed. That they have a Eucharistic love that grew within me. That God had something for me, which was not just great parents to show me the faith, but a plan for me to love the faith too, to love Jesus in the Eucharist too. and to know his goodness in an intimate way and to share that goodness and to bask in that goodness, that could change everything. In your family, but in the world, in the culture, that could revive a world that so desperately needs it. So I asked him if we could do something maybe a little unique, but something that I think we all need to do. And I'll pull my youth minister hat on for a second. And I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes. Adults tend to listen, so hopefully if you close your eyes just for a second. And I would invite you to maybe open your hands in front of you. Nobody's going to come around and put something there. I'm not Oprah. We don't have things under the pews for you. Just to take a deep breath in and slowly release it. And just invite the Lord into your heart in this moment. And to say those very words that Martha said, Lord, do you care? Are you here? Do you have something for me? I think it's really important when we enter into a time of prayer to start from a place of gratitude. What have you done for me, Lord? What have you given me, Lord? What do I have to give to you? And just to take a moment and recognize that the greatest way we can foster a Eucharistic love in our families is to foster a Eucharistic love within ourselves. And to welcome the Lord to show us his goodness in a new way. So we're going to take a moment on this holy ground to pray.